Rodislav Moldovan, and I'll talk to you about how you can develop an application in how you can debug an application in production, and not only, basically in literally any environment. I'll give you one idea. I'm working for a bank in Luxembourg, and before doing this kind of analysis, developers were spending from a couple of hours up to 2 weeks to understand what is happening. Many teams, many products, many apps, many everything. And it's very likely that you had somewhat a similar experience yourselves. And they were doing lots of what we call archaeology. I'm a software craftsman, and archaeology is definitely not something that we are promoting. And what is that? Is meaning literally reading logs and trying to understand from the logs what is happening. So let's see how we can do things differently. And what we implemented at the bank is a different technology similar to that one, to this one. It's just that one is a bit more expensive, so this one is much more affordable. And for my clients, I'm proposing mostly this one. To give you some concrete numbers, so we went from a couple of hours up to 2 weeks of debugging to 15 minutes for 80% of our problems. And so 80% are solvable today in 15 minutes. And the rest 20 minutes, if they're not solved in the first 15 minutes, it can take up to 1 hour, but no longer than 1 hour. So it's max 1 hour, and then everybody knows where to look. For example, if it's not solved on the spot, we at least know what is the team responsible and who can actually do the thing. So today I'm going to use some notions like RUM, RUM, Real User Monitoring, APM, Application Performance Monitoring, and OTel, which is the most trendy word is OpenTelemetry. Before that it was called Open Tracing, a little bit in between observability, and then a little bit in between distributed tracing, and lots of things came in together, and finally OpenTelemetry, OTel. This is the thing that stuck. And today you have quite a lot of libraries that you can use for both front-end and back-end, which are effectively oriented around OpenTelemetry, because OpenTelemetry is not only performance and stuff and logging, it's as well metrics and whatever you can have in your application. So the objective is to investigate issues on front-end without asking each client to send us the logs. And if the front-end issue is caused by another brick, then what is the brick and what exactly is happening, why the things are falling. And the objectives follow-up, basically, is there a way, I don't know in what companies you are working, but quite often working in a company, you have this situation where you want to know a problem, and what is happening, you are trying to find the problem, and somebody will tell you, oh, you want to see the logs? Right, you need to use that tool. Okay, fine, I'm going to use that. Oh, no. You need to get access to it. Okay, I'm getting access to it. But I cannot see the logs. Ah, you're right, because you need to get access to the index from that tool. And then, okay, I want to see some metrics. Right, so for that one, you need another tool. And the story goes on. That's why we call it archaeology, because it's kind of like that. So what if we can have a tool that has all the AI sweetness, developer friendliness, and cost effectiveness? This is possible. There are quite many of tools today, and I'm quite sure some of them you're using. So ground rule, the code of the apps is already done. We ain't going to do live coding. I'm going to show you some pieces of code, but the goal is just to show the setup. And then what we are going to see is how I, as a developer, can investigate stuff. So it's mostly about investigating and trying to understand what is happening, okay? Before going there is how we can do some investigation. I don't know if you know it. It's in French. It says me, console log here, and the debugger is the face, the poker face just behind. So quite often people are doing exactly this: system out, console log, I don't know, stuff like that, which is, it's possible, it's doable, of course, but don't. Another way is to ask the log. Basically, when the user is complaining, what you'll say, hello, can you send me the logs? Well, I can tell you that it's quite difficult when somebody of a bank system is having troubles doing a payment of 50,000 and the payment is not passing. It's pretty difficult to say to that person, oh, you know what, open, press F12, yeah, right, copy everything from the console, yeah, and send us by email. It will never work. By the way, this is an actual product. Is a product that tells you, that guides you in life. So don't ask the logs, okay? So ways to do it is you can use an APM. And the APM, as you see, is basically observability behind the doors. And what is observability is something that's very hot right now. It's something that is very in demand. Lots of people are talking, but not everyone is putting it in place. So today we are going to use some of it, and the stack is the following. We have a React application that runs in Kubernetes. It really doesn't matter where it runs. Kubernetes is one place, okay? It's running behind an Nginx in Kubernetes. We have a Spring Boot application because Java and because I love Java, but it's Luxembourg.js, so why not React? Again, running in Kubernetes. We'll have ELK, which stands for Elasticsearch Log/Kibana. Everybody knows it as ELK, even though everybody is using only E and K, highly unlikely the L, because now we have file bits. And we'll have a relational database in memory because it's very simple. The goal is really to see some SQL-related stuff. We have Kubernetes because we want to see if Kubernetes can be if things running in Kubernetes can be investigated, if it really works, and some other stuff like Argo CD and Auth0 authentication. So this is the stack that most likely you'll have in your environment, meaning you'll have a place to deploy, some kind of manager to see the logs, for example, or to see what's happening with your app, some Nginx or Apache HTTPS, or in enterprise environments, IBM HTTP service. It's very likely, and some kind of authentication. So let's go to the practical session and see. Hopefully you are eager to see some code. Now, I have a little application here. I have the back and the front end, the back end and front end. So whenever I want to create a, whenever I want to add the Elastic APM to my front end application, as you see, do you see in the back? It's readable for you? So let me zoom it a little bit. So it's pretty much like that. I have all my classic stuff, and I have my Elastic APM RUM. Now, the thing is, these kind of APM apps, they often require to add something to your code. Basically, to add an agent that is going to be embedded in your code. This can create the following problems. First, problem number one. First, we have a version, meaning that if you don't update your app, most likely you won't update your agent, and it's very likely that your stack can go further, the actual base stack that collects everything, and your library is not going to be updated. So this can be the problem number one. Another problem with an agent is it's a library that goes into your application, meaning that you have an extra library to deal with, and you can have issues because this library might have a performance impact on your application. In real life, from my experience, the impact is very minimal. I mean, the impact is smaller than the added value of APM. So I never have a problem with this. Now, since the question is, can we not use such a library? And the answer is yes. We can use a different approach. Basically, instead of having a library inside our application, we can either inject it, which again will be the same agent, by using Nginx or Apache HTTP, but this is not controlled, and you cannot test it locally to see if there are any conflicts with the library. Or what you can do as well, you can use a service mesh. I don't know if you are familiar with the concept, but basically in front of every single application you have another small application that tracks everything that goes in and goes out. And in this way, you can do what's called the distributed tracing. You can see who is calling what. We'll see this in practice. The problem is that there is no way to get the information from within your application. So if you want to get information from the app, you need to have something running within the app. Okay? So you have a library. Now, once you have a library, it's not for free. It's not for free, meaning some apps are for free, some not, but you still need to enable it. And in this case, I have to write a little bit of code, nothing fancy. This code is based on env-vars. It's the mechanic of injecting variables that I presented in previous session of Luxembourg.js in Kubernetes, where you can parameterize your containers or parameterize any front-end application without rewriting, recompiling, and changing it whatsoever. Okay? So it's using variables, and voila. This is how we will initialize APM. And this APM is precisely from the ELK stack. Regardless what you'll have, Dynatrace, Grafana Labs, Instana, what we mentioned today, Datadog, New Relic, you'll find out that it's the same. You are adding a dependency, you are initializing this dependency. And it's very important to initialize this dependency, like really before you are creating, if it's a React application on Angular or whatever, it's really good to initialize this application before you start your app. And this is important. I will show you afterwards why this is important. Because you'll get some intelligence that's important about the speed of rendering of your page. Now, since we are doing this on front end, do we need to do it on back end? Because at the end of the day, some kind of front end is going to do it on the back end as well. But the answer is yes. Regardless what your back end is, in this case, this is a Java project managed with Maven. So we have the same agent from the same provider. The thing is that you have today two libraries. Libraries from the provider, precisely, New Relic, Dynatrace, whatever. They're personal libraries. They're personal agents. You have them, you can put in your application. And you'll have the maximum output with data inside your dashboard. What you can do as well, you can use open source, OpenTelemetry libraries. As you remember, we just said before, OpenTelemetry is the mother of them all, is the most popular and whatnot. So you can use the OpenTelemetry. However, there you'll have less intelligence. So either you choose to go with something cross-platform, less informative, something platform-specific, more informative. From my experience, you don't change databases every day. You don't change lots of stuff every day. So honestly, you go with something specific, and that's it. So the same, you're adding a dependency. You have to enable it. And there is nothing special. It's very, very basic. You are starting on something right before your application runs, and then you are good to go. If you don't have this kind of ifs to enable your application, your agent, when you are starting the app, especially for local debugging, you are going to get flooded with logs, with error logs that your IPM cannot connect to server. So simply, your application will become unusable. It can block. It will be really weird. So do apply the if. No, let me paraphrase it. Add some artificial intelligence. Basically, put an if. So let's look at the apps. So what we have, I have here an Argo CD. Argo CD is a manager that knows how to install applications in Kubernetes. So what I have running a backend. You know it's Kubernetes, so lots of stuff going on for no reason. But it's fine, it's cool, we can sell it. And we can go to events for that and pay 500 euro for a ticket. But it's nice. So we have, yeah, right, it's this event. So what we have here, we have the logs from application. If somebody is really fond of reading Java logs, feel free. I'm not. Even though I love Java, I really don't like to read the logs. And I have another front-end application. And surprise, surprise, if I'm going to the logs, I'm going to see the Nginx logs, because you see you don't have front-end logs on your backend. In backend, you at least you see the logs, because the backend apps, they're running on your side. Front-end, it always runs somewhere else, so you cannot see the logs. So what you'll see here is Nginx, and it's cool, why not? But it's not the same. Now, how we can run an Elastic? You can install Elastic locally on your in your environment. It's free. It's free up to a certain point. You can have most of the features: distributed tracing, observability, metrics, lots of stuff for free. And you don't have for free some things that I'm going to show you in a moment. And what you can do as well, for example, if you are a startup or even if you are working in an enterprise institution, you can go to Elastic Co. and you create a deployment of Elastic where you provide a credit card. So if you'll, I'm not going to create one right now. Is it working? It doesn't. And that is the reason. Yes, I need to create a credit card. So you have to believe me by word. I'm a very believable person. So basically, when you are creating a deployment, there is a little form to follow, and then you say what cloud, what is the size of your ELK cluster, and that's it. And what you'll get an instance like this one. So let's take a quick look of what this means. Basically, you'll get this. Let me put in F11. So yeah, let's put it like this. So what you see here is one instance of Elasticsearch, another instance of Elasticsearch, some kind of load balancer, and then you'll have your APM, the server, the application that is going to collect the data, and Kibana, the user interface that we are going to use to do the investigation. So as you see, these kind of applications, they are coming in their own components. So it's not something that you can test at home, as they say. You really need somebody to take care of it. If you are a startup, you don't have dedicated DevOps, or you are doing you are the informatician of the company, then you can use this kind of services managed, and you need to use that. You just use the soft, you don't have to install or patch it. So let's go now to our thing. When you go to Elastic, you're welcome to this kind of page, and what we see here is the thing that interests us the most is the observability part. So let's go for observability. I really love when Wi-Fi works, honestly, I'm so happy. So when we go for observability, we'll have lots of information, funny, nice, and so on. What interests us the most, I'm going to put it like this week. We'll have the services that are running in our application. And the services, I have a backend and I have a front end. So let's try to do some stuff and see what happens, isn't it? Let's get our application. What we'll see, we'll have some information about what links are being used, what kind of exceptions we have, and what's interesting here as well is the distributed traces of what happened in our application. So first, before going there, let's do some, let's actually trigger some actions in our application. So let's go to the app. This is a very basic app that does nothing really. It's just a fictional company that I'm using, like a pet store, you know, like an app that I'm using to do testing, nothing more. So this is, imagine it's a little company where you can see patients, procedures, and doctor, nothing more. So I'm trying to navigate in the menu. As you see, nothing is displayed, and that is because I have to log in. So let's go and log in real quick. No worries, it's fine. Yeah, you see, it's fine. I have I'm using LastPass, and as you see, LastPass is built in Luxembourg. It takes its time, you know. Oh no, now I did my phone. Let's do something else. Let's use another user because my phone is recording. Let's use this one. Ah, nice. Yes. So as you see, I'm logged in the application, and now I'm going to navigate, and now I'm going to see some content, which is cool. It's really nice. Now the question is the $1,000 question. Can we see all of the problems that we just encountered? Can we see them? And if so, what can we see about them? So let's go to the overview of our becoming front-end. And what we are going to see the same errors. And what we are going to put, we are going to say in the last 15 minutes. So let's go for the last 15 minutes. We have no data to display, which is a sad story. However, the things are still loading, so let's give them a moment. First thing, when you have an APM, that doesn't mean you always have live data. That's number one. Usually the data is coming 5 seconds later, 10 seconds later, 1 minute later. That's one element. Second, when you have lots of applications and you're having the same problem occurring all the time inside your applications, literally any APM server is going to collect apps, and then when they will see that the same problem is occurring again and again, they'll simply drop it. So you'll have a record, one record. If the problem happened 1,000 times, you'll have one record. That's it, of it. Because honestly, having 1,000 records of the same, you'll have a metric saying that you had it 1,000 times, but the actual information, you'll have it one time, which is pretty logical. So let's see, it's still loading. Let's do a refresh. If it's not working right now, it's not a problem because I'm going to put this week and I'm going to use some historical data. Hopefully, the thing will arrive. Now, let's look at what is happening with some historical data. First of all, we can see the links and the things that were happening in our application. What transactions have been recorded, how much time they took, and with this, what we can do, we can find what transactions are the slowest. We can find the information about which one is the slowest, which one is the fastest, by doing some basic sorting. And we can have the impact of our application. What we can have as well, which is pretty interesting, we can have the latency in our page, latency. And if I'm going to the user experience dashboard, and I'll say this week, what we'll have as well is some information about how the page was rendered. So we'll have some page load time. I don't know if you see it well, but we'll see that some pages took 1.2 seconds to load. Some of them loaded faster. And in this way, you'll know if the application was fast enough or was not fast enough. So why? So let's take a look real quick if the information about our thing is there. Most likely it will not be. Now, can somebody tell me why this can happen? Come on, you can do it. If you did JavaScript at least once, most likely you'll know this problem. Don't remember? I'll refresh you. Why the information is not arriving to the APM server? And that is because I have 2 add-ons in my browser installed. You'll never believe that. But I have to disable these wonderful browsers for my APM, and I have to disable these wonderful extensions for my application. So the thing number one, if ever your application, your browser have this kind of extensions, or for example, your users are using your amazing DuckDuckGo browser, or which one is the Brave, for example, or Opera, it's very likely you won't receive anything. So just simple, very basic, you will not know if there is a problem or not. simply because the things are not available, are not enabled in that browser. So as you see, I need to log in again. So I'm logged in, fine. Let's go back, let's do some navigation. And then we are going to go to our Elastic, do some refresh. I don't remember if I put the last 15 minutes. Yes, I did put. So as you see, we are starting to get some data. So first enemy is the ad blockers, basically. Because with the ad blockers, you'll receive literally no information. And that is very sad, especially when you are starting a product, which is the moment when it's most likely you'll have the most problems. If your customers have this kind of extensions, with some customers, you can ask them politely to disable those extensions for your website, but it will be a hard thing. You can send them a pizza guy with a pizza and say, like, while you're having your pizza, let me disable the extension for you. This can work, maybe. But you can try. You can send that pizza guy to me with 2 pizzas, Diavola and Margherita. Now let's go to our application. Let's see what we can see in this transaction. So beautiful graphs. Usually these kind of graphs are really nice to show to management so that they can buy the product. And then we scroll down, where is the actual thing happening? So what we'll see here the trace sample, and you see 1 out of 1, okay, because I have only 1. But the idea is that, you remember I was saying that if ever you have lots of problems of the same nature, it will record just a couple of them. Now what we can see in this application, in this trace, we'll see the information about our page that is loading. We'll have the related error of that page, and we are going to see all of the calls that have been made and what happened behind the doors. Okay, so let's look at the related error. And the related error was unhandled promise, rejection, JSON parse, whatever. Okay. We have lots of information, and the thing is that, as you see, it says no stack trace available. When you are deploying your applications, it's very likely you are going to write them in TypeScript. Very, very likely. And it's very likely that your application is going to be built and will be minified. So what you'll have most of the times, you'll have just your JavaScript application and the stack of the minified JavaScript. If this is interesting, okay. But as you see, sometimes you can get good information. You can see what called where and what was the order, fine. However, sometimes you'll have only this level of information, which is a sad story. What you can do, you can write vanilla JS, and everything will be just fine. Obviously, nobody will do that. So. Now, let's go back to our transactions. Let's go back to something that's more that happened this week, so that I can have a longer transaction. And I'm doing a refresh. Right, so I need to go back to this and then see that this week. I need to remove the filter. Then I'll have my transactions. So going back to the transactions, what is very interesting here is the following. Wait, why is this week and I don't see what I wanted to see? Maybe it's not this week. No, one moment. Let me try to navigate in the website, because navigating in the website will give us some information. Let's try to do some another errors. Oh no. And let's go back to our transactions. All right. Another F5. Remember, it takes some time. Sometimes you have live data, sometimes you don't. It really depends on what you're doing. And no, I still don't have them. Well, that's a bummer. Right, I have them here. Right, everything is fine. So I have this kind of information. In some traces, you'll see information like this: click input, click HTML, click div, click span. So whenever you are developing your application, you are going to put beautiful design, beautiful CSS, beautiful images, icons, everything, and 99.99 you are going to avoid accessibility. Adding accessibility elements to your pages. This is like, the thing is that APM apps and APM libraries, they're actually using accessibility elements to actually track the movements of your application. So by adding accessibility, titles to your buttons, images, inputs, everything you have, by adding all of that, instead of having click input or click div, you are going to have click submit user or save patient data. Click blah, 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 blah. Usually in French you say click machin bidule, voilà, which means basically click something. And you'll have all of this kind of information, which is really practical. It's much easier to understand human words than click span. So let's see what happens when I click on a button. I have this, let me zoom out a little bit. So let's analyze a little bit this kind of trace. I'm trying to investigate a problem. I'm trying to get the doctors, and suddenly the doctors are not displaying. I'm a front-end developer, okay? The doctors are not displaying. What is happening? So the thing is, with APM traces, you remember I was saying that in the backend we have to add it as well, front-end and backend. So what's interesting with this is that me as a front-end developer, I don't have to know literally everything about the backend. However, what I can know is that I've clicked on a button in my app sends a request to the backend. I see that the backend received the request. I see that the backend is asking the database. And at some moment, what I can see is that here, for example, instead of using a doctor, for example, it can use house or car, because it's a bug in the backend, that's it. And I'm a front-end developer, I know that I'm not looking for doctors. So what I can do, I can contact the backend team, and I can tell them, hey guys, boys and girls, or whatever you are, so select from, I see that in this trace you are selecting from cars instead of selecting from doctors, and I'm looking for doctors. So what they can do, they can go and fix the problem. So the thing is that you don't need to know a lot of backend in order to be capable of investigating something real quick. And if ever you are a full stack developer, which does not exist, but why not? What you can do, you can as well click on this button, and you can see the SQL and have some fun. SQL, the most amazing language. And you can see some information about what was happening, what is the information, the SQL that has been executed. Sometimes you can have the information, the parameters that you sent, because sometimes when you are sending this parameter of yours to do doctors, what you can have, you might have as well some IDs in URL, something in the body that you are sending. And what you can see is that the user that had this problem is actually sending wrong data, and why the data is wrong. Maybe it's a bug in the software, maybe it's a tentative of phishing, maybe it's a tentative of cracking your code with bots and whatnot. It can be anything else. So APMs are useful not only to investigate as a developer, but to do anomaly detection and all kinds of problems. Security, audit, investigations, and whatnot. So the last thing that I wanted to show you is what's called a service map. And while service map is nice, this user interface is bad. Let's try to do it a little bit differently. Do you see in the back, do you see the screen? I'm sorry, I cannot zoom in because this part at the top is as well getting big. So with these kind of things, what you can see is the following. You can see your application that's connected to some backend, that's talking to some application, to some database, and eventually to some authorization server. Why these kind of things are nice? Because you can spot visually the components that are linked to your app. And sometimes instead of saying, oh, there is a problem and my app is not working because you, the bad backend and whatever, you can actually analyze the thing and see some links and potentially contact the right team in the spot. Well, everything that I'm showing here is theoretical. Let me show you something from production, from development of an actual project. Hopefully that interests you. Even if it's not, I will still show you. So log out. Real quick, I'm going to log in into another user. So this is a project that is about to go in production. And I'm going to show you how the things are in theory versus how the things are in reality, okay, in development environment. So as you see, we already have much more applications, of course. We'll have, and this is the last 15 minutes. So let's put, as we did in the other test, let's put for, I don't know, 30 days. So this will take a time. Every single APM server is taking time when you want historical data. It really takes time. So as you see, we have more application. And what is interesting, whenever you are using that, you can already see the latency. And let's sort everything by latency and see whoever is the worst for obvious reasons. That's the JavaScript. You see? Look, it's the numbers. Not even Java is the least, is slow. This is false actually, but just to troll a bit. Let me organize this. So let's see how the application is working. So we see lots of activity, especially here, where they identified 60 bugs, but then fixed them. And we see quite a lot of transactions. And what is interesting is that if ever one kind of problem or one kind of thing is triggered very often and it's slow, you'll have some information about the impact that it has over your application. That is very important to understand that as a developer and as a person that, for example, as a CTO or as a product manager. So as you see, we have lots of things, lots of transactions, some of them taking 3 seconds, some of them 5 seconds. That's a lot. Mind you, I did not know that. So in this way, factually, you know how your application is doing. And as you see, accessibility is not there as well. So a click button, click query, why not? And let's open one of those. Which one? No, not here. Yes, let's open, for example, main companies. Let's go for companies. So what will happen here? You'll have a pretty long stack trace with lots of things happening. And as you see, there's a lot of HTTP calls happening, okay, behind the doors. Well, this is interesting because first, you can see if you have too many calls happening in parallel. First of all, you can identify if somebody is not working well. If you are doing lots of calls, HTTP calls, it's very likely you have a problem in your API because you need to do at least as smallest a number of calls possible. And this is as well a sign of rest when doing so many calls. For example, you can spot these kind of things. Null, you see? So this, beautiful. I wonder why it's null and not undefined, but null. Maybe some Java developer did this. So yeah, you have fire, and suddenly, look at that. Look, you have lots of failures for obvious reasons. But the thing is that we can identify it instantly, you see? We don't have to see what was the problem, blah, 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 blah. No, you just open, you see the traces that have problems, and you identify them. And what's interesting, you can click on a trace, and you will see a bad request, and what the information you sent to that request, and you will see lots of parameters which nobody ever cares for. And apart from security, they'll want to know where this IP came from. And yeah, this is usually the biggest stuff. And let's go just real quick to the service map, the thing that I was showing a bit earlier. So while this is my front-end application, if you'll go into an actual application, then your service map is going to look somewhat different. It looks something like this. So you have pretty much everything. Applications, calling each other. Lots of stuff happening. You'll have microservice calling whoever you want. So lots of stuff. Now imagine reading the information for all of that, trying to read the logs for everything. Many instances, every single instance with its own log. It's very difficult. But what's much more easier is to have an APM doing and giving some sense into whatever you are doing there. So that's pretty much it, what I wanted to show you for today. Let's go back to the slides because slides are the most important. So highlights, ad blockers. They're going to simply block everything you do, literally. And there is nothing much you can do, especially with DuckDuckGo browser and Brave. It won't work. It works, however, with Firefox and Chrome and Edge. No problems here. Accessibility. So yeah, add accessibility. It will make your life much more accessible when debugging. APM and RUM requires learning. It's not for free. You are installing, I'm going to solve it right away. No, you won't. You are going to cry first, and then try to understand why you don't see the trace, and be nervous, and this is shit, and let's put Dynatrace, and whatever. No, you need to learn. You need to actually spend some couple of days to watch some YouTube videos, read some documentation. ELK documentation exists, but nobody knows where. And you can use this kind of service map to have a sense of what applications are running, where they're located, to have a sense of latency. Because if you're calling a microservice, let's imagine, and then that microservice is giving you bad information, and you know for sure everything works fine, but it doesn't work, with the distributed trace, you can see that you are calling a microservice, and that microservice is calling another microservice, and the other one is going into timeout. So you are not receiving data because another third party is going into timeout. So you don't have to lose your hair and nerves investigating. You are just picking the phone and hitting with that phone on the desk of the developer who did that. So everything is seen as one infrastructure, regardless where it's running. Again, you can see dependencies. You can see third-party services that you are interacting with. And if ever one third-party service is not working, you go to dependencies, you see it's down. For example, failed transaction rate. You see small transaction rates, but this one, for example, look at this local host. What is that? I don't know. So 100% failed transaction rate. It's not me, it's the computer. So you can see who is working bad or well. And if you are afraid that latencies can be bad because things are running in different clusters, don't be. Here we have an example of something running in AWS, OVH, I don't know where, Kubernetes. And you have small latencies, 100 milliseconds, 1 millisecond, 39 milliseconds. So the latencies are pretty manageable, so you don't have to be afraid of. However, this gives you an information if ever there are tens of thousands of milliseconds, or I don't know, tens of seconds, minutes, you will know that there might be a timeout, an I/O, anything. So you have all latencies, which is fine. And under 40 milliseconds for everything that runs in the same cluster. So it's fine. Logs, yeah. Usually when you use one tool to rule them all, you'll have logs associated with some distributed trace. Meaning that you as a developer, front-end developer, you find a problem and you see that it's on a microservice level. Fine. You take this link, this URL from the app. You are sending this through Slack because Slack is the best. This is false. Discord is the best. So you are sending through Discord, and the person on the other side, the developer, backend developer, is going to open the link and is going to investigate further. You see the thing? So it's an instant communication. This is really, really powerful. And yes, you better use. Yes, so the logs this is archaeology. You have to read a lot. Nobody loves to read, so just don't. You can use APM distributed traces, and you'll understand most of the times what you have there. You have, at a glance, a real good input about what your application, what's happening with your application, and you can put this on big TVs, and when is the World Cup, watch football, and then use it for dashboards afterwards. But the idea is that you can put it on TV and live, almost real time, have data, with the exception with ad blockers. No ad blockers, no data. So yes, when you're using managed services, it's under 5 minutes. To create Elasticsearch stack, it will take you 5 minutes on your phone. My first thing, I did it before going to sleep on the phone. So it's real quick. Pros and cons, oh, that's a lot of stuff. Do you have any questions? Yes, please.
You showed us a beautiful dashboard with a lot of data.
True.
What about GDPR?
Any other question? So the question is about GDPR. Of course, it's not very GDPR friendly, of course. So what you will want to do is the following. First of all, you're going in all of your backend applications, you are going to review all of the log that you're doing. That's number one. Second, you are going to go into your APM system, and you are going to configure the retention of the APM data. And normally it should be 2 weeks, okay? GDPR usually says 5 days from the request. You have to comply during 5 working days. Well, 2 weeks, 5 days, who counts? So the thing is that you need to keep it low. But to put it short, no, literally not a single platform has an actual mechanism to protect from that. There are mechanisms to hide fields. For example, you are doing a post request. You are sending a body, and you can say in the application, hide this field, this field, this field, mark them as protected, so that developers cannot see them. They exist. And when somebody is saying, yes, our system can do that, yes, some of them can. And but if you are activating such things, they are going to explode your cluster. They're just it will be very expensive. Now, that's one problem. Second problem, you're going to do backup data, right? So when you're doing backups, there is no way you can clean up your backups from GDPR. They're still going to be deleted when the backup is going to be deleted. So no, there is no real GDPR friendliness here. There is only, you can limit the impact, but you cannot completely clean it up. Sad story. Yeah, so any other question maybe? Yeah?
I have a question. You said no surprises with fees. So we had a recent incident with the denial of service attack. How does that fare?
The whole planet has it, yes. So what I will suggest, indeed, when you have a denial of service attack, there is not much you can do. If your front-end application is running, and your APM is trying to send data to your cluster, but your cluster is under DDoS, you lose all of that data, okay? Backend applications will still collect logs, but the front-end application will not be able to send, and the user will eventually refresh the page or close the tab. So there will be no APM log sent. Yes, when there are I/O problems, network I/O, you'll lose the data, yes. It's not persistent, unfortunately. Some of the libraries are trying to save them locally, but it's dangerous because you can expose the data locally. It's just too much data. Yeah. This can happen. By the way, I don't know if you saw, but recently it was just crazy the last couple of days. Any other question? Yes.
Don't you feel like the application becomes heavier when you have this APM running? Because it, I guess, gathers the request,
Yeah.
keep it in the cache, and then
Yeah.
you push it to the servers?
It does. It becomes heavier, 100%. And what we can do, actually, we can open real quick. We can do a little test. Not performance for now, but just let's go for network, for example. And this is a post. So it's sending 2 kilobytes per request. Honestly, when you're running a lot of time an application, it will be a lot of data. So all of this data collected and sent, it will have an impact. From all the numbers that I saw, the impact can go up to 2.5%. If the APM has some problems with the library, I saw that as well, it can go to 40% penalty. So you need to test it locally in different browsers, maybe on browser stack or something. Yes, indeed. This is something that you have to...
This is only the network?
This is only the network, yes.
Because I think the in-memory of the app also increased probably.
No, not much. Yes, it does increase, because for each and every information that it sends, it's about 2.5 kilobytes, but if it's a lot of information, and for example, not being able to send, it will keep it locally, and yes, the storage will increase. But at the moment, things are going to be dropped because it's increasing too much. You'll have a penalty, most likely up to 2%, most of the time. So it's manageable. I mean, it's okay. Of course, if all of you is going to put ELK, then yes, the browsers will die. But you can put one Monday, next Tuesday. So the users using this app will not suffer. Now I'm seriously, now it's fine. You can enable and disable them, occasionally. So it's okay. Yes?
Question.
Yes.
So if the user wants to phase out of this data, he can simply use a Brave or ad blocker.
Yeah. Yes.
But there is no way of having it like a on and off button from the client side. Yes, I want to start. Let's say.
Yes, this exists. I saw it on some websites. Some websites are actually giving you like a cookies-like pop-up, saying that we are, if you don't mind, we are going to profile the application while you are using the app. I saw that. Honestly, I don't know. To me, it's more of a UX question. I don't know. You can do that, but again, pissed off users are lost usually. So they're the most important, You want to learn from their experience, the most important. But usually they go away, so they are not going to turn on. I don't know. To me, it must be an UX question to put it nicely so that the user clicks yes. Yeah. So as you see, it's not everything is fine. But in big enterprises it's cool because you can impose everything. So yeah, that was it. Thank you for attention. Yes, please. Yeah.
You talked about ad blocker. What if we use self-hosted instance? Does it also?
When you use antiviruses.
No, self-hosted Elastic Search instance.
You still. Your ad blocker will still block it. Yeah, by default. I saw, by the way, I saw that, as you see here, it's not visible, sorry, but I'll tell you. I have uBlock origin, and this is the slide from Google Chrome. It's more than 1,000 blocks already, just by displaying you these slides. So in uBlock or Privacy Badger, the other that I have, sometimes they accept localhost. When your APM is pointing to localhost, sometimes they accept it by default, but not every time. It really depends on the ad blocker that you use. But again, it's only for localhost, which is locally, yeah, it works.
Usually they are able to detect that this is a tracking system even though it is...
Yes. Because most of the times they work with whitelist spisak. It's a list of things, a list of URLs. So they have wildcard and the URL, and then they block by that. Yeah. Questions? No? Cool. Yes.
Regarding more backend.
Yes.
Because so is there any good practices how maximum long request should be? Because if it takes too much time, for example, one request and then another.
Yes. There are best practices for that. And the practices are the following. Usually, it comes from UX part. Every request that's under 1 second is good. And the thing is that every request on the front-end side under 1 second. Meaning that regardless of what you do behind the doors, regardless how many microservices you are going to call, or how many microservices will call other microservices, you need to split this second and give a percentage of milliseconds to each and every microservice. This is what I'm doing every time when I'm developing software. I'm taking this second, this 1000 milliseconds, and I'm saying this microservice is heavier. 100 milliseconds you have. You must answer in this timeout. You see?
Yeah, because for example, I'm working in fintech, and we have sometimes backend which is very old.
And very slow.
Yes, and we have some cases when I came to the project, to some project. So we had issue when you ask the list, and then you don't have from this request enough information, and you need from like 200 items in the list to ask 200 requests.
Yeah.
To get the detailed information, and you're waiting. So I think, so what should be done in such cases? The backend should be rewritten or no?
In this case, I will see a couple of solutions. First, what I will do is I will talk to in the short term, I'll talk to UX to build an experience that is loading little by little things so that the user is not getting bored, an UI that is nice to spend time with. So that will be one thing. And another, I'll put a cache. Very simple, I'll put in front of it a cache.
All information cache.
Yes, with short-lived cache, 1 minute, 2 minutes or so. And then it will be a cache for the things that are not changing often. In finance, there are things, most of the things are not changing often. So just cache them. For 1 minute, it's enough most of the time. And this will speed up very much the answer. Yes, it will be slow for the front end, but it will be like, and then, and data is there.
We need, I think, to have a talk about memory's function because we use it for caching.
Yeah.
And it caused a lot of bugs which I fixed after the guy.
Yeah, I will put cache not only on front end, but on the back end.
Okay.
Yes. So on something that's located physically not far from the backend or from the client, and it will be a cache. And it can be Memcache, Redis, Elastic, Apache Ignite. It doesn't matter. It's an in-memory cache 100%, and it has to be fast.
Yeah, and as you know, the cache issues are the ones that are very, very difficult to solve.
So the best cache is no cache. We know. Now, sometimes you have no choice. I mean, as a quick solutions, when your user are like UX first to entertain, put a game maybe, and then caching, and then solve the backend problem.
Yeah, okay. So I think we have 5 minutes to switch the dots.
Real quick, yes.
Rodislav